Appreciate what you're doing. Good afternoon. Welcome to our March 10th meeting. I'm going to call it to order and start by asking Director Mitchell to lead us to the pledge to the flag.
Pledge, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Start with the Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for Cablecast on Metro Cable 14, replay on Saturday, March 12th, 2016 at 12 noon, and Monday, March 14th, 2016 at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. Webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. Board Clerk, are there any speaker cards?
There are no speakers this evening.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move to the consent items. Chief Wells, I believe you have a comment before we get into that?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just draw attention, it was actually on consent item number 3 on surplus vehicle designation. And we wanted to remove, it's actually paginated on page 12 in your packet. It's district ID number 2441. It's it's actually a typo there, 1988 LTI Tiller, has 110,000 miles on it. And we want to pull that off of the consent agenda at this time for further consideration as in terms to future value of that vehicle.
All right.
So with that, other than that, everything else on the on all the consent items 1 through 4 would be still intact.
Thank you, Chief. Board members, any questions or comments on the new consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, I would motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
Thank you, Director Kelly.
I'll be glad to second.
Thank you, Director Jones. Moved and seconded. Please call the question.
Director Mitchell?
Before my vote, I'd just like to thank the chief for what he had just told the board, and my vote is aye.
Gould?
Aye.
Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Abstain.
Barnes?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Let's move to presentation items. Is Mr. Alvarez here?
I do not see Mr. Alvarez in the audience, so maybe we can take an action item or two and wait until he arrives.
Why don't we do that? Let's move into the first action item, which is the mid-year budget review. CFO Thomas. Good evening, Ms. Thomas. How are you?
Good evening, directors, Chief Wells. Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer for the district. I'm here this evening to present the recommended mid-year budget adjustments for fiscal year 2015-16. I'm just going to start off with a bit of background on the mid-year budget process. As you know, starting this fiscal year, we've implemented a budget review process that includes monthly reviews of budget to actual results by division managers and budget officers, as well as quarterly reviews of district-wide revenues and expenditures, as an entire budget officer group, so that we're coordinating throughout the year on our actual results relative to what we had expected based on budget. So we had done one of those reviews based on first quarter results, and then our second review, obviously based on second quarter results, which are actual revenues and expenditures through the end of calendar, or through the end of the last 6 months of 2015. So July 1, 2015 through December 31st, 2015. So the adjustments that I'm going to talk about today are a result of that process. So they're based on actual results through December 31st, 2015, and then projections for the remainder of the fiscal year based on the best available information that we have, and obviously informed by those actual results for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. So that's just a little bit in terms of process. The proposed mid-year adjustments as a result of that process were presented to the Finance and Audit Committee at the last meeting of that committee, which was on February 25th. However, after that presentation, we were made aware of a change in the schedule for an upcoming intergovernmental transfer, or IGT, with Blue Cross that originally we had anticipated would be activity related to next fiscal year, so it would be reflected as revenue and expenditure in fiscal year 2016-17, but that schedule was revised, and it will now be revenue and expenditure related to fiscal year 2015-16. So the adjustments that were presented to the Finance and Audit Committee have been revised to reflect that change. The net impact of that is about $900,000 in additional net revenue being reflected in 2015-16. And I should mention that this is related to the item that you just approved on the consent agenda to participate in that preliminary IGT with Blue Cross. It's related to transports to activity that occurred in fiscal 14-15, and it will be reflected as 15-16 revenue and expense. I should also mention that the other IGTs with the other plans will proceed on a schedule that will have those revenues and expenses reflected as 16-17 as opposed to 15-16. So it's really just this preliminary IGT for Blue Cross that will be reflected this year as opposed to next year. And as I mentioned, that's a net increase of $900,000 approximately. In conjunction with that change, so reflecting that revenue and expense this year as opposed to next year, we also added in a $200,000 expense for the purchase of a training prop, a one-time sort of expense, taking that out of that one-time, if you will, revenue that's occurring this year as opposed to next year. So it's those two changes that reflect the differences between the Finance and Audit Committee presentation and the presentation that you'll see this evening. The other thing that I wanted to mention before I get into the numbers is that although we are recommending some adjustments for all of the major funds, the presentation really focuses on the general fund because the adjustments to the other funds don't substantially change the net results for those funds. So you'll see that there are resolutions relating to all the funds, but the presentation will focus on the general fund. So with that, this table presents the recommended adjustments to the general fund. The first column is reflecting the currently adopted budget, so that's our final budget, as well as the budget amendments that the board adopted in October. The second column is showing our recommended mid-year budget, and then the third column is the difference between the two, or the adjustments that are being recommended. You can see that overall, if you look down at the very last line on this table, our revenues less expenses plus transfers, we're going from a current budgeted deficit of approximately 2.4 million to a recommended mid-year budget deficit of approximately 2.1 million, or an improvement of roughly $300,000 as a result of all of the changes that are being recommended. I'll go into detail in each one of those revenue, starting with revenues and working through the expenditures. But that's the overall summary of where we're ending up based on the recommendations. So starting off with general fund revenues, the mid-year budget adjustments result in an increase of general fund revenue of $7.5 million from about $176.7 million currently budgeted to a recommended $184.2 million revenue budget. That increase is the result of the items listed here. So starting off with deployment revenue, we don't, as a matter of practice, budget for deployments at preliminary or final budget. We add those back in at mid-year when the actual amounts are known, so the revenues and the expenses are not reflected in the budget until mid-year. So what you're seeing here is the revenue component of deployments. So that's $3.6 million in total revenue. And as you'll see when we get to the expenses, we're also adding $2.5 million in labor expense as a result of deployments. And then the difference between the two being the 25% administrative fee, as well as reimbursements that we get for equipment. That's contributing to that difference between the 3.6 and the 2.5. The other item adding to our revenue budget is $1.3 million of financing revenue for the P25 radio purchase. So this $1.3 million of revenue is entirely offset by a $1.3 million equipment purchase cost that was added. So those basically wash each other out, and we don't have any debt service payment due this year, so there's no impact, no net impact to the budget as a result of that, but we needed to add both the revenue and the expense. Medic cost recovery, we're showing an increase of $1.9 million. It's about 6%, and that's really based on our experience so far this year. We've seen those revenues trending both above budget and above where we were at the same point in time last year. So we're projecting an overall increase of $1.9 million in that revenue source. GEMT, that's our ground emergency medical transport. That's basically a Medi-Cal fee-for-service reimbursement program with the state. We did see for our GEMT activity that occurred in fiscal 14-15 that we get the reimbursement for this year. We actually saw an increase over what we had anticipated and what we had budgeted, so there was a $300,000 increase as a result of that. However, that was more than offset by the fact that we had been budgeting $1.2 million for revenue related to fiscal year 2009 and 2010 activity that we've yet to receive the reimbursement for. It's been held up due to a state audit, and we had included that revenue in the preliminary and the final budget, assuming that it was likely that we would receive it this year. The most recent information we have from the state is that it's unlikely that it would be received this year. So it would have been a one-time revenue this year. It will be a one-time revenue in some future year, but not this year. Okay, and then IGT, so intergovernmental transfer. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation the difference between the numbers that we talked about on the 25th at Finance and Audit Committee and the numbers that we're going to talk about this evening, and that being primarily the result of a change in IGT. There are in fact two changes that are impacting the IGT numbers relative to the current adopted budget. The first relates to the IGT for rate year 13-14, so related to the activity that happened in 13-14. When we amended the budget in October to reflect that revenue, we had done that based on the total amount that we could claim reimbursement for. What ended up happening is that in one of the plans, in fact, in the Blue Cross IGT, there wasn't enough room for us to claim 100% of our reimbursement. So there was a reduction as a result of that, which in terms of gross revenue transferred in was about a $500,000 reduction. And then, of course, we have the increase as a result of the preliminary IGT for Blue Cross for fiscal year or for rate year 14-15 activity. And that's a gross overall total increase of $2.2 million in revenue. So add those two together and it's a $1.7 million increase. But you'll see noted it's 1.7 in total revenue. Really only $700,000 of that is net revenue, because the way that the IGT works is that we transfer money to the state and then we get more money transferred back. So what you're seeing in the revenue budget is the total amount that's transferred back, including what we had originally transferred, essentially. So with those two changes that I mentioned, we're looking at $1.7 million in total revenue increase and $700,000 in net revenue increase when you consider the changes to the expenditures, which I'll talk about when we get to that part of the presentation. And then finally, the other revenue category that I wanted to mention is that we are budgeting for a $300,000 reduction in our CRRD fees for that's primarily as a result of inspection fees trending below budget. So this is really just a projection based on what we've seen so far this year and what we expect the rest of the year to look like. So moving on to labor costs. Overall, we're recommending a $5 million increase in the labor budget from $147.3 million to $152.3 million. And the largest factor contributing to the increase is the elimination of the pension cost sharing. So effective January 1st of this year, there's no longer pension cost sharing for Classic members, and for the remaining 6 months of this year, that cost impact of that is $3.2 million. So again, that's a 6-month number. Obviously, a full year would be double that, or about $6.4 million, but the impact to this current fiscal year is $3.2 million. The other item contributing to the increase in labor costs are, as I mentioned earlier, the labor costs for deployments, which is not included until mid-year. So this is the $2.5 million cost that's getting added to the labor budget, which is more than offset by the $3.6 million in reimbursement that we're receiving. And then finally, we have adjustments both to overtime and holiday pay, combined resulting in about a $1.1 million increase, and that's based on year-to-date results and what we're projecting for the rest of the year, really just a truing up of actual versus what we had expected and budgeted for in those items. So those increases are offset by $1.9 million in combined reductions in the labor budget. So the first item here, we have a reduction of about $600,000 as a result of reducing the number of recruits in the academy, and that's the cost not only to actually pay the salaries and benefits of the recruits, but also for the drill instructors. We don't have as many recruits, we don't need as many instructors, so that's a combined reduction. We have $400,000 reduction as a result of vacancies and positions that are unfunded. So there's $400 of savings there. $700,000 for workers' comp and our sick leave buyback based on what we've seen so far this year, so based on the actual results versus what we had budgeted for. Workers' comp was one where we had historically seen the numbers come in at a certain dollar amount. Last year, we had a lower experience, which we thought may have been an aberration. As we've moved through this year, we've seen that we're actually tracking pretty closely with where we were last year, so we're reducing the budget as a result of that. And then there are other various adjustments that account for about $200,000 of decrease in the labor budget. So looking at other general fund expenditures, so essentially all non-labor expenditures, We're recommending a services and supplies increase of $1.6 million from $25.9 million to $27.5 million. But you can see the main items contributing to that are things that we talked about when we went over the revenues. So we have a $1.3 million increase for that P25 purchase. That's entirely offset by the $1.3 million in financing revenue for that purchase. And then there's a $1 million increase for the IGT transfer, which again is more than offset by that revenue that we're getting back for IGT. So I do think it's important to note that we do budget for that transfer as a services and supplies expense. In total, it's roughly $5 million that gets budgeted in our other services item. But then we get that money plus more back as revenue, and that's what results in the net revenue impact from the IGT. So those two increases are actually offset by $700,000 in net reductions for all other adjustments in services and supplies. And that's really as a result of efforts to reduce costs, as well as just reflecting the savings that were already achieved, through the first 6 months of the year. A good example of that is, we talked about the labor budget and the reduction as a result of the academy having fewer recruits. Well, that means that we also have reduced costs for hiring services and, the services that we pay for the academy. So you're seeing that impact here when we're talking about services and supplies. And then in addition to services and supplies, we have an increase for other costs and transfers of $600,000. So $200,000 of that is for the JPA membership, and then $400,000 in additional transfer from the general fund to the capital facilities fund. $200,000 of that is the training prop that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So we budget for capital purchases in the capital facilities fund, and then to the extent that those purchases are not offset by financing revenue in that fund, revenue comes in from the general fund to pay for those costs in the capital facilities fund. And then the other $200,000 increase in transfer to the capital facilities fund is the result of the fact that that fund actually ended fiscal 14-15 with a negative balance. So the transfer is coming in from the general fund to offset that negative balance, which was really the result of revenues in the capital facilities fund in 14-15 being lower than anticipated. So overall, the adjustments to revenues and expenditures and transfers in the general fund result in a net deficit of $2.1 million. That compares to the current budget deficit of $2.4 million. With that, we project the reserve balance as of the end of this fiscal year would be $20.5 million, which would represent 11.6% of net budgeted expenditures. That actually ends up being the same reserve ratio that we have as a result of the current budget. Despite the fact that there's a slight improvement in the reserve balance, we're also adding to the net budgeted expenditures, which is the denominator that we use to calculate that percentage, so we're ending up with the same result there. So that really summarizes the changes for this fiscal year, but I did want to take the opportunity now to point out that there are some known cost impacts that are coming that are not reflected in the 15-16 budget, and that we will need to address starting in 16-17 and in future years. So these include unmet one-time equipment needs. For vehicle replacements, for example, there's an estimated $24 million that we're behind schedule in replacing based on our vehicle replacement master plan. So if you look at all the vehicles that we should have replaced, what we think the replacement cost for those vehicles is, and tally that all up, you get to $24 million. I'm not suggesting that I'm going to bring a budget this June that has or this May that has a $24 million vehicle replacement budget. But, those are our equipment needs that are out there that really have not been met because we've been in a situation where, we're producing budget deficits and not in a position to fund all of these needs. SCBA's estimated total cost for those replacements is $5.7 million. Turnouts, estimated total cost $1.2 million. That's spread over 2 years, and many of these will end up being, multi-year purchases, but these are the estimated total costs that we're looking at. Station alerting, estimated total cost of $1 million. MDC's estimated total cost is $700,000. And then in addition to these sort of known equipment replacement needs that we have, we also know about some future ongoing benefit cost impacts. So our PERS rate for fiscal 16-17 is increasing for safety members, is increasing from 38% this year to 42% next year. Looking at the impact both for Classic and PEPRA members, that would be a $2.6 million cost impact as a result of that rate increase that we would see in next year's budget. SCRS, we have roughly a $30 million unfunded liability with SCRS. Addressing that and paying that off by 2040 would require us to pay about $1 million more per year than we are currently doing. So we know that cost impact is out there. And although it's not yet known, based on history, I think we can expect that we'll see increased cost as a result of escalation in medical premiums. So that's not a known number right now, but I think we can anticipate that there will be increased costs as a result of that. So all of this is really to get you ready for the fact that, once we adopt the mid-year budget adjustments, we turn right around and we start preliminary budget. Literally, that's what we'll be doing next week. So we'll start shifting gears from 15-16 and thinking about 16-17 and beyond. And some of these costs will start to be reflected in those discussions. But shifting back to 15-16, the recommendation before you this evening is to approve the resolutions adopting the mid-year budget amendments for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Ms. Thomas, thank you for that excellent presentation. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps I've missed it somewhere in here, but in the slide where we had about 20.6 million in reserves, resulting in 11.6% of our overall budget in reserves, does that include making up that deficit of 2.1 million?
Correct. So that would be taking our starting reserve balance and subtracting the 2.1 million deficit that we expect for this year, and that would then be our ending reserve balance.
Okay, and then after the adjustments, we have ended up with the same 11.6.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Director Rosali?
In the item that talks about increased revenue from the collection agency, is that increased amount coming to us because of an increase in their efficiency in collecting, or is it because of an increase in the cost itself that just runs the number up?
You're referring to the medic cost recovery?
Right.
Right. So it's not so much the collection agency or the billing company, but it's really the underlying transport activity. So the fact that we have an increased number of transports, and we're also seeing more reimbursement. We think really as a result of more people now, because of the Affordable Care Act being covered by some sort of health coverage. So we've actually seen an uptick in Medi-Cal coverage, which tends to be a lower reimburser, but actually pays more than somebody who is not covered at all, where we're typically not recovering any of that. So it's sort of a combination of those factors.
Interesting. Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Director Kelly?
are you prepared for a motion?
I am, sir.
I would move resolution adopting the mid-year budget amendment for the general operating budget 212A for the fiscal year 2015, 2016 final budget.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Board Clerk?
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move action item 1B, Resolution 2015-16 Mid-Year Budget Adjustment for the Capital Facilities Fund 212D.
Thank you, Director.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Question?
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. 1C, I move action item 1C, Resolution 15-16 Mid-Year Budget Adjustment for the Post-Employment Benefits Fund 212F.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. Question?
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, I would move adopting the resolution for the mid-year budget amendment for the Grants Fund 212G for fiscal year 2015, 2016 final budget.
Thank you. Question?
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
I'd like to move resolution item E, 2015-16 mid-year budget adjustment for the leased properties fund 212L.
Thank you, Director Barnes.
Second it.
Thank you. Question?
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the resolution adopting the mid-year budget amendment for the Simulator Grant Fund 212S for the fiscal year 2015, 2016 final budget.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Question?
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. I just want to make a quick comment on this. I sat in on the budget review process. I know the hard work that went in. I know that this board and this public should feel a great sense of confidence, and we appreciate very much the fine work done by this department to keep us on track and, maintain our fiscal integrity. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're stalling for a second. Have you seen me dance? You
Please
know,
no.
That's why we're stalling.
Please no.
We'll go for the stall.
For the love of.
The tap dance might be better.
I move that we don't see you dance.
Second.
You're out of order, as usual. Ms. Padilla,
That's nothing new.
are we going on to a candidate? Okay. Would you take it away, please? in terms
Yes.
of the CSDA?
My apologies. We still do not have Mr. Alvarez here with
All
the
right.
Modified Motorcycle Association. So,
Thank you.
good evening, directors. Before you this evening, we have the opportunity to nominate a member of the board or a general manager to serve on CSDA's board. The term is from 2017 to 2019. And the leadership of CSDA is elected from 6 geographical networks. We are in the Sierra Network, and seat B is up for election. It should be noted that the incumbent, Miss Ginger Root of Country Club Sanitary District, has decided to run again. So, with that being said, I would like to open it up to any discussion you might like to have or answer any questions in regards to this nomination.
Board members, comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say if there is a board member, as in the past, who would like to be nominated, I'd very much support and introduce that as a resolution, but I'm not aware of any fellow director who wishes to be nominated.
Director Barnes is here this time to defend himself. So.
Fought that battle, lost that battle.
Anyone, interest? Well, Ms. Padilla, thank you for presenting it. It appears there's no interest. On behalf of this board, I think we'll pass.
Thank you.
All right. Next, in the interest of expediency, we're going to take a brief recess to close session. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the presentation that we intended to give. I'm not sure what to advise. Chief?
Well, and actually, I'm not sure how brief it'll really be. It could be a little longer than brief. I'm not sure. However, I would like to say, and just thank, I know Engine 62 is here tonight, and I would just like to say from my appreciation, and I know that it's a modified motorcycle club, it's really raining hard outside, and I'm pretty sure that unless they're modified with a roof, they probably, from a safety standpoint, aren't here, and so I could appreciate that.
Would 62 stand up, please? We'd like to acknowledge you. Thank you. Thank you for your fine work.
Well, I do appreciate them coming tonight, and I'm sure that the Motorcycle Club is extremely grateful and will be here another time, but I just want to recognize you guys tonight for being here. Thank you, and then we can adjourn to closed session. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We're going to stand adjourned. Well, you know, they can buy one for Rosales, they can buy one for you. No, I don't. Let me tell you that. At 6 a.m. I would say that. I just keep filling water all day long.
Yes, thank you.
I love this
I
thing.
tried to make
You
it
can't
like-
kill it, I've dropped it.
Traffic
Okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting. Council Lawver, would you report out of closed session, please?
Yes, the board met in closed section under Government Code Section 54957 to discuss the fire chief's selection process. No action was taken.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is fire chief job description. Chief Wells, please.
Thank you, directors. Actually, it will be our recommendation tonight to, from staff, that the board has reviewed and provided input to update the job description. So tonight, it would be our recommendation to do so. But with that, I'd like to, with the following addendums to that particular job description that were discussed. And Board Clerk Pineda, do you have those?
I think I
motion.
make a motion. So,
Okay, it's in the motion, sorry.
yeah, there you go, no problem. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion relative to the job description of the fire chief this evening with the following edit. On page 3 of 6, under the education and experience requirement, under item 1, it reads, a minimum of 5 years of increasingly responsible fire service management level experience in local government firefighting and prevention that would provide broad and extensive experience in an administrative and supervisory capacity with at least 3 years of service in a senior chief officer level position, period. Strike and remove or equivalent, strike and remove the word or, strike and remove item 2. That is my edit on the motion.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the question, please.
Director Mitchell,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Wood, Barnes,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
We have a fire chief job description. Thank you. All right, let's move on to reports. President's report, I have none. Fire chief's report, Chief Wells.
Well, thank you again. And also, as part of my report tonight, after Chief Bridge gives the ops update, I would also like to recognize tonight, after my comments, Michelle, Captain Item, our PIO, will be stepping forth with Assistant Chief Greg Casantini to give a short presentation on an issue that is of great pride for the agency. So we'll leave that as the anticipated moment here. So in my general report, Deputy Chief Eric Bridge has done another senior staff video segment. It's up on our website. Certainly encourage the board and other members of the district to take a look at that. I spoke at the Citrus Heights Rotary Club on the 2nd of March. Always a good opportunity to get out there and speak to the community groups, and always glad to do that in the city of Citrus Heights. Our negotiations with Local 5-2 are continuing. Actually, in this very room on the 16th of March is we're having our quarterly town hall meeting. Good opportunity for the command staff to meet in front with our different members of our agency, represented from all the different divisions. Also, we ask for a volunteer from each battalion that's on duty that day. It gives a great opportunity to have dialogue, and certainly the board of directors are welcome to attend that as well. The Cal Chiefs EMS section meeting will be hosted here in this very room as well on the 17th of March. Looking forward to that. We have a Rancho Cordova 2x2 meeting, 2 o'clock on the 23rd of March here at Metro Fire Headquarters. I would like to, and of course we talked about it last meeting, but Larry Davis has retired officially. He was here last time, still employed, but we wish him well in his current endeavors. 7 years of service in his capacity in economic development and grants, and also 2 years previously with the Citrus Heights Fire District as a resident firefighter in the years 1976 and 1977. So 9 years altogether of service, and we're very excited to see him well off into his retirement and future endeavors. We have a recruitment for Fire Inspector 1 or 2, and the final filing date for that is the 17th of March at 5 p.m., and it's both an internal and external recruitment. We have a firefighter paramedic internal only application for which is the final filing date of the 11th of March at 4 p.m. We have a single role paramedic recruitment. Final filing date is the 14th of March at 4 p.m. We have a reassignment opportunity for the a day staff captain position in EMS, and that is for captain paramedics and captain/paramedic. And that is a final filing date of the 11th of March at 4 p.m., and it's a 2-year commitment. And then we also have a reassignment opportunity for a training captain, and that final filing date for that is the 11th of March at 4 p.m. as well. And then we have a battalion chief promotional exam process coming up in the spring, and the final filing date for that is April 1st at 4 p.m. We also have intern dozer operators. We just went through a process to replenish our numbers in that group. Great group of people applied. We have firefighter paramedic Dat Pham, firefighter paramedic Aaron Vole, and firefighter paramedic Kyle Warren, all entered into the heavy equipment program as dozer operators. We also have, which we're excited about, a public safety only event at the CHP Academy tomorrow. It's on March 11th from 11 to 3 p.m. And the goal is to demonstrate to the public, through the news media and public safety brothers and sisters, of stepping up to save a life for one of their own. And basically, it's a statewide bone marrow drive, and it's a kind of a longer issue here in that this gentleman, a CHP officer, went out. He's on the bone marrow list, so he gets called to donate. And in the process of doing that, he finds out he is a victim of cancer himself. And I would tell you that it's something that is near and dear to all of us in the cancer awareness and prevention program and treatment. So tomorrow at the CHP Academy from 11 to 3, that's going on. And then there'll be the week of March 11 through the 18 is a statewide bone marrow drive. And we'll also at Metro Fire be hosting our own drive. We're going to be trying to support, obviously, the CHP next week, and then in the near future, we're going to be doing something more locally here as well. So we'll be part of both. Let's see. And one thing to note, that the CHP is screening to the ages of 18 to 44. I believe that's a, not necessarily the CHP, but that's the filing for the bone marrow donation. And basically, that age group accounts for 90% of those who actually get called up to donate. So it's actually, because it obviously costs a lot of money to screen these things, so they do it in a percentage-wise of success. They've asked fire department members of all ages, however, to join them at the academy tomorrow on the 11th. In uniform is very appropriate and encouraged in a show of solidarity. So this is truly the life-saving effort for this Officer Keith and others waiting for this bone marrow donor. So the chance of a match statistically is only 1 in 400. So I think it's very important. The more people can get registered, the more opportunities there are for a match. Also, I would like to say that we have our own internal group of Metro Fire personnel that are donating their head and their hair on their head, I guess, is to the St. Baldrick's Foundation. It's a well-known and respected charity that helps fund research trials and for child oncologists to help fight the battle of childhood cancers. So I'd like to recognize Chief Holbrook is here with a fantastic head of hair, and he'll be part of that as well. And Marie Bernal, also one of our, works in the grant division as accounting specialist. She's stepping forward also with her 5-year-old grandson. So I'm very excited about that opportunity. So that'll happen on the 13th, this Sunday, and it'll be, let's see, at the Hourglass Salon and Boutique on 5128 Arden Way in Carmichael, and they're trying to raise $1,000 for that endeavor. So thank you, Chief Holbrook, and some things are an improvement. Maria's right there. I'm sorry. She's right there. Could you wave to us so everyone can see? I would tell you this, that
Thank you.
very, the word courage, bravery, and all those different things come to mind, and I can tell you courage, and really appreciate that. So both of you, thank you. So that is what I have for this evening, and I will turn it over to Chief Bridge for the operations report, and then we will talk to Captain Item after that.
Good evening, President Scheidegger, board members. Eric Bridge, Operations Chief. Short report for you tonight on the numbers since our last board meeting on February 25th. We've been dispatched to total calls of 3,577 calls, of which EMS related were 2,000 720, and we transported 75% of the time on those. We also had 4 structure fires. One of those structure fires resulted in a successful rescue of a citizen in Citrus Heights who was stuck in the house in his wheelchair and unable to get himself out. So good news there, and expected to make full recovery. So if you don't have any other questions, that's all I have for you.
Board members? Thank you, Chief. Captain Ida.
And Chief Cassantini, there you go.
Good evening, President Scheidegger, Directors, and Chief Wells. Michelle Idem, Captain and PIO here at Metro.
Good evening, Greg Cassantini, Assistant Chief Fire Marshal. So this evening, we're going to talk to you briefly about an incident that occurred a few weeks ago. As a quick reminder, the Residential Care Facility Inspection Program kicked off last September. And with oversight from our grant managers, Aaron Castleberry and Marie Bernal in the audience, they were able to receive a grant for $467,000. And they were tasked with fire inspections, on-site education, collection of data, and pre-fire plans of our residential care facilities. So there's about 930 facilities that they've been working on, and we're about 6 months into the grant program. Quite a few. So on February 17th, 2016, in the area of Station 68, there was a garage fire reported at a residential care facility. So if we look back about 4 months, back to October 1st, Station 68 was just opened. And that made a big impact with this because there was 6 residential mentally handicapped residents inside this residence along with the owner. They had a really well-involved garage fire. There was a vehicle in there. But what's key about this is that our inspectors had just closed out a fire inspection 3 days prior to this, and it was really key to what happened. I'm not going to give it away all right now. We'll follow up in a few minutes. So we have a video to show you because a couple news pieces was done on this. And then I'd like to recognize some of the staff that's in our audience that participated in the video and also with this really important inspection program. So we're going to roll the tape, and I'll get back to you in a minute.
So required in schools and apartment buildings, but for some reason, regular fire inspections are not required in residential care homes where some of the most vulnerable Californians live. But Sacramento Metro Fire has found a way to pay for care home inspections. And as ABC 10's George Warren shows us, the new inspection program has already paid a priceless dividend.
A recent fire inspection of Ronnie Carrillo's care home turned up a few minor corrections, like less complicated hardware on the bedroom doors for the 4 developmentally disabled adults living here, and spring hinges on the door leading to the garage.
See, this door should be self-closing. You know, when you open it up and let go, it should close by itself. Yeah.
You can probably tell from the scorch marks above the door where this story is heading. Shortly after Carrillo made the corrections, fire tore through the garage. The door to the house, which was usually left open, was closed because of the spring hinges, and the fire never spread into the living area.
Absolutely, this could have been a deadly fire.
This residential care home is among 840 in the Sacramento Metro Fire District, about 1 for every 2 square miles. And Metro Fire's begun regular inspections on all of them.
All of the items that we're looking at are fire and life safety. They're all important, even though they may seem minor to the homeowner.
Metro Fire received a federal grant to cover the cost of the inspections because, believe it or not, state law doesn't require them.
This is something, it's not state mandated, but the response we've gotten from the homeowners has been totally positive because they want to keep their clients safe. They want to keep their home from burning down.
Well, I'm glad nobody got hurt.
Carrillo says the required work cost him less than $100. One can only imagine what it saved. In Rancho Cordova, George Warren, ABC 10 News.
So the reason that we wanted to show you this was twofold. Is because there's a great commercial that's coming on right now. much. So, part of being a large fire agency like we are is you see us in the news a lot. Most of the time it's responding to fires. That's what the news likes to show. But generally you never get the opportunity to see all that goes on behind the scenes, all the work that gets done from community risk reduction, from what it takes to keep this operation running smoothly. So the opportunity to have a story that showcased what our grant division brought in, a resource that we never had before, and then what our inspectors are doing was an opportunity that we couldn't pass up, and just showing you, I'm getting pointed to.
Art, in the back of the room is.
Oh, and that is going to come from Chief Castantini.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to recognize the hard work of two of our Inspector Twos. They've taken on a mentorship role, a leadership role, and also the most important, the educator role with our new Inspector Ones. So Inspector 2, Diana Schmidt, would you please stand up? And also Inspector 2, Krishana Fields. There they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so may we please have Courtney Gibbs, Janae Callison, and Angela Bruqua stand up as well. These are the three that are doing the daily inspections under the supervision of our more seniors, and also Inspector 2, Lisa Barsdale. So I'd like to give special recognition to them. We've got great comments from them. We get weekly emails and phone calls from other agencies, and also the care providers that want more education. So we're going to work on that. But these three are working hard every day behind the scenes. And oftentimes the firefighters get a lot of credit, but our staff in the CRD division works just as hard, and I'd like to recognize their hard work tonight. Thank you.
Unless you have any questions for either of us, we're out of here.
Questions? Well, I have a comment. Chief, Captain, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I have, in my past life, a little experience in residential care facilities and that whole area, and I know how important this is. And I hope the community out there recognizes the term that the reporter said, Metro found a way. Once again, Metro is demonstrating being out in front and protecting their community. And there's just nothing more important than this. I just think it's fantastic. And you guys did it with a grant. Good work. Thank you. Thank you. Keep it up.
Yeah, I'd like to I'd tell you what, and thank you very much for all being here tonight. And I can tell you that you guys are, it's a system that we do here. And we have yes response, but how do you quantify prevention? Oftentimes that's something that it's hard to do. And so this particular case, absolutely from the grants crew that got the grant to the people that train and do the grants and execute it, to the training of the people in the field and the hiring that got those individuals in here as a team and a system to, I think there's a bunch of lives saved here.
Absolutely.
And yes, the fire engines got there and did their deal as well, put the fire out and got those people out. Great system. I'm proud to be part of that. Thank you.
You betcha. Good work. Thank you. My wife's going to have me in one of those facilities any day, I think. Council Lavra.
No report.
Thank you. Anyone here from 522? All right. Committee and delegate reports. Executive Committee, nothing to report. Communications Center, JPA, Chief?
Yes, the Comm Center JP Board has not met since our last board meeting, and our next one is Tuesday, March 29th at 900, right?
Thank you, Chief. California Fire and Rescue Training, JPA?
Yes,
Kelly?
Mr. Chairman, the JPA has not met since I last reported out, and we will meet again on April 21st in the Exercise Simulation Center.
Thank you. Finance Committee, Director Wood.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. The Finance and Audit Committee has not met since our last meeting, the last board meeting. Our next Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be March 24th at 5 o'clock in this room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Policy Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Policy Committee met this evening and had a rigorous election, and candidates came through. We then moved on to the travel and conference expense policy, which was discussed and approved and will be moved to the full board for consideration at a later date. I believe that our next meeting is scheduled for the 14th of April, unless that's moved. Thank you much.
Thank you, Director. All right, we'll go to board member questions and comments. Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Kelly?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to tell the hardworking men and women of this district that this is a board director statement. I'm always have been extremely happy that I've been associated with this district. I take a great deal of pride knowing that I am part of what I consider to be the high-performing team, otherwise known as Metro Fire. And tonight we had another shining example of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Director Clark?
I will pass also, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Director Gould?
I will give my time, Mr. Chair, to my colleague on the left from the great state of Citrus Heights, Mr. Orzali.
Well, Director Orzali.
And Director Gould, I wanted to thank you for not bringing your Gould steaks and Gould water to your campaign for the chairmanship of the Policy Committee. Aside from that, I do want to congratulate the district for this grant program. Tremendous piece of work, and what an opportunity, following what the chief said, to talk about we can quantify what we do, but we can't quantify lives saved through prevention. It's just a phenomenal thing, and I think, just as a thought, we need to be thinking about succession planning for how we can maintain this. Once this grant is done, how might we be able to incorporate this as an ongoing policy? So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director. Director Mitchell?
I'd like to give kudos to the people that got this grant for the district, and when you see this team effort, it's from one organization or one portion of our district to another, and I think it just shows the teamwork that affects this entire district. I would be one of those peoples that would tell you, only because I come from the ranks of the guys that squirt the water on the red stuff, but it's truly a team effort, and I think the public sometimes loses that. But as we saw tonight in this video, what better things can you have than people in your district securing extra money, which leads to inspections that have never happened before. And right after the program starts, we have potentially 6 lives saved. So kudos for that great team effort, and continue the good work. Thank you.
Gotcha. Director Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I want to say is, as we go over the successor for Chief Wells, I have to say that I've always been impressed in year 2 of my seat right now of the leadership that not only have you shown, but continue to show. It would be easy to start looking off into the sunset and riding off, but I can say to anybody that's listening that's here, I would ask you to tell your colleagues what Chief Wells does is fight to make sure the right person coming in is going to take over and has a vision that's going to put this district in good place, serve the community and the membership. So, interest of time, I get it, but I thank you for everything that you do, you continue to do, and who you're helping with the selection. It means a lot, so thank you.
You betcha. Director Wood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The video we saw, thanks to everyone that was involved in that, echo the comments that were said earlier, but that video does bring home the importance of the work that was done by Larry and the people that worked for him, and the importance that we get a successor for him and maintain that work so that we can keep these programs going. The only other comment I would have is I'm excited to see fire camps coming back on July 12th through the 15th, and I've already been promoting it throughout schools and areas in my area. So hopefully we'll get a good turnout, and appreciate all the work that Brenda and everyone else does for that program.
Good, thank you. With that, we're going to recess to close session. Quick break? Somebody say? All right, sounds fair.
Bio.
This one's mine, right?
That is yours.
Okay, thank you. I don't want you to catch what I got. Yeah, don't comment, Orzali.
I would never do that. Still waiting for our adult fantasy camp.
For what?
Our adult fire camp.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you know, they had when Randy and I went to it. Remember that? Yeah.
That's right, that is adult fire camp.
That would be fun.
It was darn
We could have a little profit center out of that.
Oh, heck yeah.
People would pay for it. You pay to go play with Major League.
Oh, to go and see the simulator, that's
Oh, I know, it'd be great. That's why we need to get Zinfandel done so we can, we could have a real training center.
You know, when I first came on, we had to donate a house. In the dealership, you guys, you donate it to the fire department, you're gonna.
I totally appreciate you, bringing it to me.
But, excellent, you could go to the place, so.
All right, gotta go.
The Metro Fire said, thank you, we'll burn it down. And so I was brand new on the board, and they invited me to come and participate in one of them.
Cool.
Yeah, and just.
This was a great training experience for all our guys.
It was a great training experience for me, and you're crawling down this hallway, you can't see that far in front of you, and they hold that heat gun in front of us. 1 inch outside your mask is 300